you're in high school and you're the one place that you're the one adult that they can be themselves around and be safe. That is a huge attraction point for why they should continue rowing. Oh, I can just go there and be myself. That is huge because there's so many different other aspects of their life they can't do that, right? So if rowing is a place they could do that, the numbers will come. And it's so much fun. Well, it's fun because you get to be yourself, right? That's why it's fun. And I would say that how you develop relationship with your athletes, the kind of questions you ask. I always try in the fall, have everyone ride a launch with me at least once, right? We sub people through. You just get a chance to ride the launch and ask questions and shoot the breeze. And we talk about rowing. And then when the boat's turning, hey, how's school today? How was your classes today? Stuff like that makes a big difference.
Other than that, all set? Anything from me?
Let's do it.
Cool. Let's jump right in. For everyone listening, we have Coach Manny Valentin here from Skidmore College up in Saratoga, New York, and I'm excited to chat with Manny. He is someone that has come highly recommended from a lot of different coaches out there, and excited to dive into all things about his coaching background, but also what's cooking up in New York, that rowing environment, Skidmore, coaching for both the men's team and the women's team up there. So, Manny, we have a lot of stuff that we're going to dive into. Might as well not waste too much time. So my first question for you is, we highlighted it a little bit before we chatted for a couple of minutes before we kind of kicked off the recording, but Saratoga, right? Like being up in that area, upstate New York, like there's a lot of rowing up there, and I know you've had an attachment to that region of the country, both from your time now at Skidmore, previous to that with Saratoga. I think your college experience was at Ithaca, so different part of New York, but still like up in that region, give or take. And I wanted to kick things off, right? And I'm going to let you kind of share a little bit about your background, and you can kind of start with that if you don't mind. But then I want you to kind of talk to everyone out there about like the vibrancy that is that upstate New York rowing community. Like dive into that. But before we get to that, talk a little bit about what's cooking up at Skidmore, what the next couple or first couple weeks as you kind of get ready to get back on the water and approach the spring season. But dive into that, and we'll dive into some fun topics here.
Yeah. So thanks for having me. This is my 18th year coaching. I started right out of college. So I graduated from Ithaca in spring of 07, and fall of 07, I was the grad assistant at Ithaca. Coached there for 5 years, left fall of 2012, then went to Marietta College for a semester, was there for a little bit, ended up in Saratoga in spring of 2013. Coached from spring of 2013 to fall of 2014. I was there for about a year and a half, working with the middle school and then the varsity boys assistant. Then I moved to Long Island. I was coaching at Sagamore Rowing Association for 2.5 years. Loved it down there. And then my wife's from Saratoga. So when we started our family, we came back to Saratoga in spring of 2017. And then was working with Saratoga Rowing Association again in all different types of capacity, middle school, high school, the Orion team, U23 stuff in the summer, regatta coordinator, and was there until I started here at Skidmore in the fall of 2021. And then I've been at Skidmore. This is my 4th year now. So my first freshmen are now seniors. So that's kind of my rowing background. As for Saratoga, I've been kind of had a hand in the pot of everything, right? I've been fortunate enough to work with middle schoolers, and love long-term athlete development planning and making sure the middle school training program is appropriate. Lots of small boats, lots of games. You get really good as a coach when you teach 5 middle schoolers in singles how to do a leapfrog row. You get really good at coaching them and developing your coaching skills. Was fortunate enough to work with the Orion team, like the complete opposite side of the spectrum. Got to go to Worlds in 2018 with the lightweight quad. That was incredible. And the patience I learned coaching middle school, that sticks, right? Got to help SRA through the pandemic when teams had to be socially distant and we had to find a way to build team while everyone was in singles, right? We did that, and being part of the regatta scene. We're always SRA is always hosting regattas, and then one of the first things I did here at Skidmore was start hosting regattas. Bringing teams to Saratoga. We got a 6-lane fully buoyed race course in our backyard. It's 700 meters from our boathouse, uh, and we're pretty centrally located, so we're able to be the meeting spot for some really good teams. So we're able to get teams from the Mid Atlantic to race, the Eastern Massachusetts teams, and we're the middle ground, and we're the beneficiaries of being able to race some really good crews and bring some really good crews to Saratoga, and that's been a blast. Being able to increase the profile of the teams we're racing here at Skidmore.
And that's like one of the things I wanted to dive. Like it's a just that area for rowing. Like it's very vibrant, and like teams like I think again there's some big regattas up there, and you being a part of some of these big regattas and bringing probably a lot of college programs up that way, which would be exciting. Like exposing more athletes to that part of rowing. Like I'm here in Philadelphia, right? Like there's rowing, kind of like there's rowing happening every weekend once spring and all the way through October. And going up there, up that way, like again, like I was doing some research on just the teams out there and Skidmore, and like it's an incredibly vibrant community. And I think one of the things I wanted to dive into, or actually right from the jump, I'm curious to hear from you. So coaching middle school athletes, and this is a question that I'm pondering, or that I'm always curious about, and I get it actually a lot from parents, but like coaching athletes at that age, what you kind of highlighted a little bit how you kind of manage, those younger minds and kind of attract them to the sport. What are your thoughts on when athletes should start rowing? How to manage or how to coach young athletes like that, and even all the way up till freshman, sophomore year of high school, where they're still kind of figuring things out. Like there's middle school, and then there's kind of early high school before you kind of really attach yourself to the sport. And then also the long term, just development of those athletes, which I know is something that is always a priority when you're coaching at that level, making sure that they kind of stick with it and enjoy it. But give your thoughts on that right from the jump. I think that's a fun topic that I'm always fascinated to hear about.
Yeah, uh, I'm anti specialization. I think athletes are athletes, uh, and there's so many things you can learn from other sports. So I'm anti specialization, including rowing. Right? I think my kid goes to Little League. It's twice a week. Right? He's in first grade. He goes twice a week. Right? Like rowing can be the same thing. Right? There's benefits in just learning how to row a single, especially at that age when you're not terrified of flipping. It's fun to flip, right? And your center of gravity is so small that you can learn balance, right? Versus when you're 6'4" and 200, balance gets a whole lot harder because you're just so much bigger, right? Uh, the use of small boats, right? The little cadet singles, I think is and with the pontoons is huge, right? Getting athletes to small boats, and what's hard is the gamification of rowing, right? But that's what it comes down to for the elementary school, the middle aged school, that on the when the athletes are training, when the varsities are training, when the collegiate teams are training, it's you and the number, we're doing the work, right? For the middle school kids, it's you want to teach consistency, play the dart game, right? It doesn't need to be how many meters did they pull. Who cares, right? The kid who had their growth spurt first is going to pull the fastest meters, and they're just lucky their birthday fell on the right time, right? Uh, if you're a March 1st baby, you're the oldest, and if you're February 28th, you're the youngest, right? Uh, if you want to learn about core stability and balance, right? I actually follow an Instagram account. I don't remember the name of it, but he's a long-term athlete development guy, and he has athletes hold a tennis ball on a book and get from the ground and stand up without the tennis ball falling.
Ooh.
And all of a sudden, you're learning how to brace your core and to balance and be delicate with touch. All things that rowers are going to need, right? Those you can describe a rower balanced, using their core, delicate with touch, right? You would love that in your rower, but it doesn't need to be on the water, right? Complementing land training, right? Uh, there's so many different ways to gamify training, and that's what best fits the youth, right? But too many rowing coaches are like, oh, they're small, they're just smaller varsity, and they're not. They're middle schoolers who are still developing, and there's so much benefit. The same reason I signed my kid up for Little League, right? I don't care how he plays baseball. I want him to learn from another adult. I want him to learn how to play with the team, right? I want him to experience the highs and the lows. Uh, there's so much of that rowing can be a benefit. It doesn't need to be they have to win the race, right? Too early, it's like, oh, they got to win the race. They got to win the race. Now, there's something about the race that makes it important. And we use rowing as a vehicle for teaching these life lessons, right? So there has to be some sort of race, right? Because you can teach how to handle anxiety, right, from a young age. But if there's no environment to be anxious, how do you teach that, right? So a race does bring a little something to it. All right, this is how we handle nerves, uh, which is a transferable skill in and outside of rowing. I think those things are important, right? But it's a whole lot harder to coach middle schoolers when you're gamifying it because you just can't take your college, the thing you learn in college, and cut it in half. All right, so the varsity would do, with 10K before practice, we're gonna do 5Ks. It doesn't work that way with middle schoolers, right? You have to find a way to gamify it, and that's hard because you got to like create the materials, and it's got to be fresh, and it's got to be energetic, and it has to be something you're excited about. All those things are important, but it's hard to come up with that stuff, and that's why the really good coaches find a way to make it a game. And before you know, the athletes in an hour and a half later are sweaty or exhausted, have laughed really hard, and had a ton of fun with their friends. They don't realize how much work they just put in. They just got to hang out with their friends for an hour and a half playing games. And that's what makes middle school special, because then when they have their growth spurt and their maturity catches up and they want to start training, they have all the tools they need, right? They have everything they need, and now it's just easier for them to experience success, right? You go to build a house with an empty toolbox, it's going to get real frustrating, right? But you go to build a house with all the things, and then when you show, we're like, oh, it's not that bad, right? Because I have the things. I think it's the same thing with middle school rowing.
I absolutely love that, and I think like you highlighted, and I love right from the jump, like the number of coaches that have come on here and actually kind of echoed those same thoughts of like specialization, like again, like play other sports, be an athlete, right? Do little league when you're
Mm-hmm.
growing up, get cut from the basketball team, then find rowing, like all these different things. I think that's something that I'm very big on as well, where it's just getting people like, again, like rowing's going to be there, right? I didn't start rowing until I got to college, right? Like, and that's the
Yeah.
path for many. Yeah, that's the path for many people, where it's like it's going to be there at some point, right? And
Mm-hmm.
kind of let it find you at some point later, but play a multitude of sports, be athletic, learn coordination and balance and all these different things, and not get too attached to the numbers. And I think branching off that, my next question for you is, okay, like what does that transition look like from middle school or even just younger novice rowers who maybe start in high school to getting their mind wrapped around, okay, like the next phase of this evolution is being competitive and maybe winning some races and all the things that come with that. But then all of a sudden that transition, you start to get the noise of performance and 2K score and what do you do, like how does that bridge? And again, very broad question, and I'm just
Mm-hmm.
curious to hear your thoughts on that. But like you're going from an environment of just getting them to kind of latch on to what this sport is all about in ways that are fun and exciting and you know more kind of play than competitiveness. And then how do they flip the script and attach themselves to, okay, like now, you know varsity programs and winning races and the prospect of maybe doing it at the college level? How does that transition navigate itself?
Yeah. Uh, the coaches again need another skill set, right? So you got your middle school coaches; they need a skill set. That freshman rowing, U17 rowing, they need a skill set. And the biggest skill I think a U17 coach can have is patience. Because if you're trying to instill internal motivation, they got to find their path themselves. You can do it with external motivation, but now they're just doing it to be compliant. And you can run that program and it can work. You run the risk of burnout and you run the risk of athletes just doing it to get coach off their back, which is fine, right? There's not a judgment on that. It's just every training program has pros and cons, right? And if your goal is on the water performance in a short amount of time, a more direct leadership style is more effective, and research backs that up, right? But if you can afford to be patient and you can afford for athletes to find their own journey, right? Where they come up to you, hey, coach, I think I want to be good at this sport. Oh, let's talk about that. But again, going back to birthdays and grades and growth spurts and the boys versus the girls, right? The guys are going to be later, right? If you can be patient and let them figure it out, right? And then them develop an internal motivation where they set their own goals, they set their own objectives. They want to figure out how to be good at this. Then they'll do all the work on their own. And an internally motivated athlete is one that's really hard to beat, right? Not saying an externally motivated athlete, not hard to beat, right? But long-term athlete development, when an athlete owns the process, they're more likely to stick with it. If they got some ownership of it, they're more likely to increase your retention. I've said this from the start of Skidmore. I've said this forever. How you win is with seniors, right? You look at the NCAA tournament; you can see those upsets a mile away. There are a group of seniors that have been together for 4 years versus the one and dones that don't have that cohesion, right? Younger Manny actually broke down an NCAA tournament once and looked at the percentage of seniors versus how far they made it. And I didn't get far enough to have solid data, but I got far enough to see a trend. There's always a team that makes the Final Four during March Madness, and they got 8 seniors. Or they have a group of seniors supporting the freshman who's having the All-American freshman. They have seniors on the bench, but having seniors is so critical, right? So if you want to have seniors, you have to increase your retention. If you want to increase your retention, they got to find their own journey. If they're compliant, they'll check the checkbox and be like, oh, I'm out, right? But if you can be patient enough for them to find their own journey, and nothing's more frustrating than a kid that you know can be fast but hasn't decided to do it on their own. That's so frustrating. Like, you're 6'4" in ninth grade, like, just do a little bit of extra work. But if you don't take the deep breath and let them figure out themselves, they're a 6'4" athlete who used to row. And not everyone's going to find it. Rowing's not for everyone. They can be intrinsically motivated. You can do all the right things and they still might quit. But generally speaking, retention rates are higher with athletes who are intrinsically motivated. And if you want to win, you got to have seniors. They've been through the ringer. They've seen enough stuff that when the moment gets tense, when they're down a seat, they can keep their cool because they've been in it enough. When you constantly are pulling up a ninth grader to varsity, right? Because they're 6'4" and they could be good. They haven't seen enough. They haven't been in enough battles. And not that they can't perform, but it just makes it harder for them. And our job as coaches to make their life easier, not harder. And that's my opinion, right? Doesn't make it fact. I acknowledge that, but I've had pretty good success growing teams, so I like to think it's good for something.
No, and I really love that, and I want to, again, like, that's the fun thing about these conversations. Like, it can go any direction. And one of the things that because just managing that, right, growing, kind of keeping athletes around. Like I had a conversation with an athlete a couple of days ago, and I asked, like, how's the team doing, right? Like, and they said, oh, we're having trouble, putting out a freshman 8 or a freshman 4 this year. And that's always like the biggest thing that's like alarming to me, right? Because like, this as a college coach and with the high school coaches, like for high school programs, like if you don't have that big, like rowing is 100% retention is not a thing, and like someone's gonna leave, and if you don't have that kind of big bottom of the funnel, right, or top of the funnel, meaning freshmen, then it's going to be very hard to have that senior culture that truly latches on to what this team and program and sport is all about. And it's always a red flag to me when I hear an athlete say, oh, we're having trouble getting a freshman 8 out, right? Like that should always be your biggest pool of athletes, and then working that funnel down over time, because some people are
Mhm.
going to figure out different interests. What would be your advice to coaches on that front, or people who run programs and all these different things? Like, again, purely your opinion, your experience, but keeping athletes around, or even getting more athletes to be attracted to the sport, or building that freshman funnel so that you can have that senior culture established, right, through the course of having people who, like you said, I think maybe it was before we started recording, or during, but like you have seniors at Skidmore who you've now seen, develop all 4 years there. Like, what would be your advice on that front, both from the college and from the high school standpoint, and just focusing on building that pipeline of really good, excited athletes?
Yeah. I would say the relationship you develop with the athletes and that they know that you are more than a coach, that you're a person that has interests and hobbies and likes and challenges. Uh, I think having a relationship, and when it comes, what I do is I try and set the 15 minutes before practice to just sit on the bench. We got like a picnic bench outside, and we just shoot the breeze, right? I try to have an open door policy. Uh, when I was coaching freshman guys at Saratoga, right, there was the picnic bench, and we always met at the picnic bench at 3:30, and the bus dropped them off at 3:15, and for those 15 minutes we were just out there shooting the breeze, and it was like 2014, so like Fortnite was big. Uh, tell me about Fortnite, and they would explain to me, and they would just love sharing their interests. Oh, cool, right? Uh, doing things like that, like just being available to the athletes. I would say the 15 minutes before practice when I was in Sagamore, uh, I would just stand in the parking lot, right, and greet people and just shoot the breeze with them, right. Um, my team, all my teams have always seen my kids. My kids are at everything. They know I've got kids. They know I've got stuff. I left practice the other day early to go to my 7-year-old's basketball game, and I showed up on Wednesday, and a bunch of guys were like, "How'd the game go? Did Remy win?" Right? Like they know I'm a person. They know I've got challenges. They know I've got a life, and they know that I pour my heart and soul into the team. But that it's a balance, and being a real person, I think, makes a huge difference in retention. Right? I think having a relationship with athletes makes a huge difference in retention, uh, especially coming out of COVID, right? Where we were digital for so long, and people didn't get connection, right? I think connection is huge, and if you're in high school and you're the one place that you're the one adult that they can be themselves around and be safe, that is a huge attraction point for why they should continue rowing. Oh, I can just go there and be myself. That is huge because there's so many different other aspects of their life they can't do that, right? So if rowing is a place they could do that, the numbers will come, and it's so much fun. Well, it's fun because you get to be yourself, right? That's why it's fun. Uh, and I would say that how you develop relationship with your athletes, the kind of questions you ask. Uh, I always try in the fall have everyone ride a launch with me at least once, right? We sub people through. You just get a chance to ride the launch and ask questions and shoot the breeze, and we talk about rowing. And then when the boat's turning, hey, how's school today? How's your classes today? Stuff like that makes a big difference.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. Like, and I think that's a bit almost that approachability is something I always kind of talk about approachability, right? Like I want athletes to feel comfortable asking me questions, right? Like I'm kind of similar where it's like, especially during the winter time where it's like, hey, like asking question or like asking the team questions that kind of like light things up, right? Like just kind of picking it like where it's like, hey, like I think I had a question of like, hey, what's some of the slang going around like in middle school and high school? Like what are some cool words? And I forget the words. I don't even know what they mean. And I'm going to refrain from even using them because I don't even know what their real meaning is. But like then
Yeah.
they're all laughing and joking where it's like, oh, my brother always says this, and
Yep.
just kind of making yourself a little bit more available and approachable, I think is a big thing. But I think one of the things with that, a lot of like I don't know if that necessarily fits the inner being of a lot of rowing coaches, where it's like that's not, there's like they are closed shelled and hard to approach, and maybe not someone that kind of has that open door, and you can't ask a question after practice for technical work or this or that. Like they athletes struggle to kind of navigate that, and I'd be curious to hear like, but also with that, right, kind of branching off that, and you can kind of take this two ways, but like with that, there also has to be a line that you hold as a coach where it's like, okay, like there's, that 15 minutes has, come and we had a great time, but now it's time to kind of focus on practice because we're trying to compete and do well at this race this upcoming weekend,
Yep.
right? That's why
Yep.
we're here.
Yep.
What does that look like? That transition, that kind of flip of the switch.
Yeah. I think that's an honest conversation with the athletes. All right. When we start our warm up, all right, we'll do our warm up. We'll have a brief meeting. We'll talk about the goals and objectives for practice. And when we're hands on, we're trying to accomplish these goals and objectives. Right. And that is a conversation I have. Like, listen, I want things to be light. I want people to have fun. Uh, Even in Skidmore, we talk about it. The boathouse needs to be a fun place, right? That athletes have so many options in life, right? That if the boathouse isn't a fun place, they will find a place that's fun. So the boathouse does need to be light, but also having an honest conversation. Like when we're hands on, we're trying to accomplish a goal that day. And I think at the very beginning, we were talking about using erg data to build confidence, set some goals and objectives. All right, this is what we're trying to do today, right? Did we check the box, right? And on the water is always a little harder just because you got wind and water flow, and nailing splits is always going to be a little more difficult on the water than it is on the erg. But at least you have a goal objective. This is the work we're trying to get done today, right? Uh, Give yourself the opportunity to build confidence, right? Go out, lock in. Uh, I learned from my rowing coach. We had like an alumni race, right? Uh, 8 random people getting together. Our practice is the warm up, right? He said, "Hey, these are always more fun when you lock in and try and get a good row. Because if you just go out there and row and bro, you'll have a bad row and you won't enjoy it. When you get hands on, lock in on being together, right? And trying to, and it was like an alumni. It was an alumni race, so it was just swing out together, and let's focus on one thing. The 8 of you haven't rowed in however many years. Swing out together. You'll have a good row. Have a good row. This will be a whole lot more fun. And it was, right? You go back out, you're coaching the college team. All right, you're coaching the high school team. All right, when we go hands on, we're trying to accomplish a goal today, right? This will be more fun if we collectively are working towards a goal, right? But we do the dynamic. We have a small brief meeting to get locked in, right? Here are the goals and objectives for the day, right? Sometimes the goal is 2 times 40 minutes of skill and drill, right? That's what we're trying to get done today. But even with that, we have a technical point of emphasis, right? We want to come off feeling better that we made an improvement on our release position today. All right, we go out, we do the work, we come back in, we debrief, both put away, we debrief. All right, after the debrief, now we can go back to rowing and browing. We can go back to the browing part, right? But having a collective goal before each practice, I think, makes a big difference too. This is what we're trying to get done today, right? And that having the switch, right? And that doesn't mean we don't have fun when we're on the water. Doesn't mean we don't. I always want to try and laugh from the soul once a day while we're on the water, not like a ha, you tripped over a step laugh, like a real good laugh. Uh, while we are doing the work, and the team knows what the work is that day. All right, let's get this done today. Right? It may be hard, and let's do it anyway. Right? Do hard things anyway. It might be raining, and this is the work today. Let's do it together. Let's lock in. And you string enough of those good practices together, and all of a sudden you're seeing some results. Yeah.
And it's almost like setting the expectation right from the front of, like, hey, like, we're when we go out in the water, we're trying to, like, you're setting very realistic, tangible, things that we're trying to structure this practice around. And through that process, yeah, there can be some laughing and joking and some jokes from the coaching and stuff like that. But like at the end of the day, our success is kind of measured on, hey, like, did we get this done? Right. Like this was the objective
Mm-hmm.
for today, whether it's indoors on the ergs or out in the water, and you're kind of building, that is that kind of like you're building that culture kind of around like that. Yeah, we want to have a good time, but we're also here for our primary purpose. Is that
Yeah, we went on a team hike, and they described it as type 2 fun. Type 1 fun is just like games, playing cards, laughing, Instagram reels, TikTok. Type 1. Type 3 is not fun, just work. And type 2 was like a team hike, right? We're going to have a ton of fun on this hike, and it's going to be hard to get to the top of this mountain, right? We're shooting for type 2 fun, right? It's not all TikTok and reels, and it's not over there, but it's not just spreadsheets and miserable. Trying to team hike. We're trying to have some fun and put some work in. So we're aiming for type 2 fun.
I love that. And I think like again, like those are probably things that you've developed just over like are like is that something that you've developed in your coaching over time? Has that been something that you've always kind of like even from when you were coaching middle school, like or learned through coaching middle school and novice programs of this and that, and then now can kind of bring to the college level? Is that something that you've learned over time? What's evolved over the
Yeah,
course of that
I
time?
I think it's learned through failure, right? And coaches aren't different, right, than athletes. We're learning, we're growing. If I'm the same coach in 5 years from now than I am today, I failed. I just wasted 5 years, right? I'm definitely a better coach than I was 5 years ago, and I still want to be a better coach in 5 years from now. Uh, I think in on the spectrum, I lean more towards being pretty rigid. So I know I have to get myself to chill because ultimately it's going to get us to our goal of being successful on the water, right? That's going to help me achieve my goal is being a little more chill, right? Because if I'm constantly, for lack of a better word, a hard ass, right? It doesn't help, right? It feels like it helps, but we know that internal motivation helps. And if you want to be internally motivated, then I got to chill a little bit, right? And I think I've learned that through failure, right? Of trying different ways. Being the super chill coach is, whatever you want. Find it organically. Well, that didn't work, right? Uh, and then trying to be this is what it is constantly, right? Uh, and we get a lot of buy-in from our athletes here at Skidmore. We've got a senior captain group. We've got a junior captain group. Uh, we have first years have to meet with the coach twice a semester, right? We're always kind of getting buy-in from the athletes, and sometimes they bring up really good ideas that I never thought of. I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do that, right? Because the goal isn't for Manny to be right. The goal is for us to be fast in May. And if they have an idea, if we're fast in May, we're all in the photo. No one cares how it got there, right? If you're in the end of the season, you're getting medals, we're all in the photo, right? Not just the one with the good idea. We're all there. So who cares how we got there, right? As long as it's ethically and morally right? Like we're not talking about like steroids, right? But if someone has a great idea and it's to help us get there, great. That's what we're doing, right? Why? Because it's the best idea. Period. Same thing with our assistant coaches. I've got fantastic assistant coaches I get to work with every day. Like, have you thought about this? No, I haven't. Let's try it. And we go and it works. We're like, great call, right? Uh, yeah, learning through failure. And I'm just fortunate I've had some head coaches that I've worked with that were incredibly patient with me, right? And patience is not something I'm good at, but I'm working on it, right? The same way the athletes are working on the erg, right? And when an athlete, uh, it's hard for coaches to say, I'm working on my patience. I wasn't patient before. I'm more patient now. Like you very rarely hear a coach admit that at some point they weren't as good as they were are now. But for an athlete on the erg to get better their junior year over their first year, that makes total sense. Feel like when an athlete PRs their senior year, you would never go to an athlete. Why didn't you just pull that your freshman year? Right? It's not that easy. Well, it took me 4 years to kind of where I am now. Right? Coaches are evolving too. We're all figuring it out too, and you learn more stuff, and uh, that's what you want to do. Right? I love telling my team, I've gained new information. And as a result of the new information, I want to change the strategy. Why don't we do it the old way? Well, I didn't have that information. Now I've got new information. We're going to go this way. And I think it's going to work out better. And very often it does. Right? Uh, love saying, I've learned something new. And as a result, we're going to try something different. And that works out pretty well.
Yeah, I think like the adaptability as a coach and kind of like again like it may not be directly linear, right? Like when you're listening or when you're watching an athlete develop from freshman to senior year on the erg, especially because it's numbers driven. Yeah, you expect it to hopefully be linear, right? That means you're doing your job as an athlete. They're developing the right way. There's been no major setbacks, right? And it's numbers driven, right? You can kind of see it. But as a coach,
Mm-hmm.
like I've had, in my, coaching career, like, I want to be like this. And, then I realized, oh, wait, you might not get the same kind of, excitement and buy-in. So you got to kind of flip it back to what was working then, but take a couple of things that you learned and so on and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. Like
Yep.
it is that constant evolution when you're dealing with people, and you kind of learn
Yeah.
that by having, and I think one of the things I want, like you mentioned it, but like just your team with Skidmore, and I want to dive into a little bit more about the team and learning a little bit more about that. But you talked about athletes meeting or meeting with athletes and getting feedback or ideas and stuff like that from both coaching staff and athletes, and that kind of culture of like, hey, like we're trying to you know everyone here is in this phase of learning and growing and evolving, not just the athletes but the coaches as well, because I think that's where, and I'm sure you can attest to this, like that's where you learn, right? Like what's working
Mm-hmm.
and what's not working, right? You kind of see like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have gone that route, right? I've done it before where I give them an erg workout. I'm like, second piece ain't gonna look good. I kind of mistimed,
Mm-hmm.
I experimented a little bit too hard. Maybe we didn't prep the right way for this, but you learn for the next time by doing that. Talk about Skidmore. Talk about, and just from a general like standpoint, like, hey, I know it's you kind of are leading the charge with both the men's program and the women's program. Like, give us a little bit of an insight in terms of the program, and then also some of the values that you and the coaches and the athletes are kind of wrapping this vision around. Describe,
Yeah.
broad question, but describe that for us.
Yeah. I tell this to people all the time. I absolutely love my team. And I tell my team this all the time. Of course, I want to be bigger, faster, stronger. Right. There's only one team every year that doesn't want to be bigger, faster, stronger. The team that wins the whole thing. Everyone else wants to be bigger, faster, stronger. Right. Uh, but this is the team I want to do it with. Right. Like this group of people. I tell it to recruits. I tell it to my team. This is the type of team I trust my kids with. Right. We went on that team hike, and on the way home, my 6-year-old and my 3-year-old wanted to come on the bus. And the bus is like magical when you're that age. I was like, sure, but Dad's tired. You got to go figure it out in the bus. And I fell asleep in the front. I woke up, was like, the kids, where are they? Right. My 3-year-old daughter had been hanging out with the women's team, uh, doing whatever. And my 6-year-old come to me, Thomas taught me something. And they were in the back of the bus. And all of a sudden, your heart, you sit up a little bit, like, oh, what did Thomas teach you in the back of the bus? He goes, Dad, have you ever heard of Pokemon? Right? And I trusted the team with my kids, right? Like, I love this team. This is the team I want to ride with. This is the team I want to figure it out with. Uh, I want to win, and I want to win with this team. And if we don't win, this is the team I want to lose with. Like these athletes, they're a really special group. especially our seniors, right, who have kind of seen the evolution of the program, right? COVID had really done a number on the team, right? And the year before we got here was a men's 4 and women's 8. Just COVID had really hit the team hard, right? And this year we expect to float 2 8s and a 4 of men and 2 8s and a 4 of women with 11 seniors, right? So it's really been a really fun journey to be on, right? You asked about kind of our value and our vision, right? That's changed over the years. When I first got here, I was very goal oriented, right? I want to win. That's the goal, right? And now this year, it's I want to check the boxes. And we do a team meeting once a week. We talk about the week that was, and we talk about the boxes that we checked, and the week that's coming up, and the boxes we're going to have to check. And if we check enough boxes, we'll get the result we want. But we got to stay in the moment. It's helped me a ton as a coach. It's helped the athletes a ton as a coach. Just if we're doing the work, if we're checking the boxes, the odds of us being successful are high. We might check every box and lose. We could check no boxes and win. But statistically speaking, the more boxes we check, the better our odds are at the end of the year. And that's been a change, and that's our new approach. And the team is responding well to it. We all want to go fast when we're on the water, right? So that, we talk about it, but it doesn't need to be said more than once, right? Instead, we're focusing on our process, right? Let's check boxes, right? Just keep checking the boxes. When we talk about our values, we only have 3 team rules. And the more rules you have, the more they can be broken. So we try and keep them minimal, but they kind of shape our team. Our first one is be here, right? So what does that mean? You got to be at practice. But not only going to be at practice, you got to take care of your body so you can be at practice. You got to take care of your schoolwork so you can be at practice. You got to take care of your stress and anxiety so you can be at practice. When you're at practice, I need you at practice, not thinking about the test you failed or the project you have. I need you here, right? So number 1 is be here. Number 2 is get better, right? Our recruit scale is huge, right? We recruited a guy who was 722. We recruited a guy who was 622, excuse me, and recruited a guy that was 730. Everyone comes in at different spectrums. I don't care which spectrum you come in. Get better, right? And our third one is be a great teammate, right? The nice thing you're thinking in your head about that teammate, say it out loud. Be there for your teammates. When your race is over, your day's not over. You stay for your teammates, right? I coach the men and the women's team, right? We both teams support each other, right? And there's been several fantastic moments in the past 4 years of the team supporting each other. Last year we went to Connect Cup, and our women's varsity 8 was down at the 1,000-meter mark. And in the last 500, we start to come back, and you can see our varsity men running along shore, following the women's 8. This past head of the Charles, our men's varsity 4 finished 5th, right? Highest in the program finish. We got medals. First thing they did, so we take our varsity 8 on Wednesdays, our men's varsity 8, and break them up into 2 4s, and we race the women's varsity 8. Every Wednesday, they were doing pieces together. The women don't want to lose because they're in an 8. The men don't want to lose because they're men, right? And it gets really competitive, right? And push both teams. The guys finish their head of the Charles piece. They get off. We see the results. First thing they do, they thank the women for pushing them on Wednesdays, right? Be a good teammate. And it's like baking a cake, right? If you have really good flour, really good eggs, and really good milk, and you let it cook, you're probably going to get a good cake. If we're there every day, we get better every day, and we're really good teammates, we're probably going to be fast. Not always. Stuff happens. But if we do those 3 things, we're on our way. And the team knows when people don't stick with the team, it's usually one of those 3 things. Yeah.
I love that. That's again, like there's so much, like just really good things just for coaches listening out there. Like, again, like when you kind of, not to take your analogy, but bring those ingredients together and just build a program around that, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's, again, that's transferable to not only college program, but also high school programs and within any sport. Like, I think those are great kind of values, simple values to kind of build a culture around. And with that, if you can, if you don't mind, but give a, if you don't mind, like, just what are a couple examples of those boxes that you were referring to in terms of check, like, like, and that process oriented leadership style, or just how we kind of go about our business just through the process rather than the result. And also, as the coach of a men's and women's program, the leader of both, are those in alignment with one another, or are they separate based off individual team goals? Provide a little clarity
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah. So the whole check the boxes grew out of the team internally motivated wanted to do extra workouts, but they didn't want those extra workouts to conflict with practice, right? So you go and you do 2 times 10 in the morning with 5 minutes rest, 24, 26, 28. And then you show up that afternoon and we got a 2K. You're like, oh, I wish I'd known that earlier. I wouldn't have done this other workout, right? So it grew out of that, like making sure and everyone's on the motivation and the commitment continuum. Some people are just going to show up for practice, and that's fine, right? Some people want to do extra, right? But if you're going to do extra, we want to make sure it's in alignment, right? So we list all the workouts we're doing for the week, and then the recommended OYOs, the on your owns, right? If you can do this OYO, this one fits on Monday. If you can do this one fits on Tuesday. This one do on Wednesday. If you're not doing anything, just show up to practice. That's fine, right? But if you do extra, that way they're all in alignment, right? And then we always have one for leadership, right? Always have one for team building. Always have one for mental skills, right? And then we always have one for taking care of our body, right? So it could be leadership, can be we talk about credibility, right? And what comes from credibility, believability, right? So credibility, know someone else's goal this week, right? You know someone else's goal. Oh, they're invested in me, right? Leadership, team building. Find a teammate that you haven't partnered with. Find a new person to partner with today, right? Or on Friday's workout, find a new partner. Mental skills, have a pre-test piece routine. And we laid out what the routine is going to be, your confidence, your composure, your concentration, like have a plan for that. And for taking care of your body, do 20 minutes of yoga on Sunday, right? And those are the boxes, right? So we've got our training plan boxes, and then we've got our, for lack of a better word, auxiliary boxes, and they're all there. And if the team practices are laid out, the OYOs are laid out, the auxiliary skills are laid out, and then everyone kind of sees it, and then we have an Excel sheet that communicates our training plan and our practice plan and the lineups and the votings, and then that's kind of at the bottom, right? Here are the boxes, check boxes, right? And the OYOs, I don't hold them accountable to it. If they do it, great. If they don't do it, fine. It's their journey, right? But the athletes who are doing more OYOs tend to find themselves in the faster boats, and that's just the nature of the sport, right? But that's why we want to carry 2V and a 3V. That's why we want to carry a big squad, because if my coach had cut me my first year because I wasn't doing all the stuff in there, I never would have developed into a really good athlete. He had really good patience, right? And he didn't need me in the 1V, right? I was able to sit in the 2V I was a second freshman, and then I was in the 2V. And then my junior year, I was like, I bet if I tried hard, I could be good at this. I'm going to start doing a little extra of my own. Oh, I'm in the 1V. Look at that. But if he had cut me early on because I hadn't developed those skills, then I never would have been the athlete I ended up being. But those are kind of some of the boxes we talk about. And every week it's a new box, and we try and stack boxes. And when you're sick, the only box we have is get healthy. Because even if you're able to check the boxes, the quality in which you're checking the boxes is kind of hindered. There's only one box when you're sick, get healthy, and then get back to checking boxes. You're better off missing 3 days of checking boxes and getting back to work on day 4 than checking 25% of the boxes for a week. Just get healthy. There's nothing more important than your health. And it's really hard for me to ask you to be focused. Talk about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If you got that flu, I had it, the flu with the cough and you can't breathe, it's going to be really hard for you to pull really hard in the erg if you can't breathe when you're just standing, right? Take care of the need, the must-haves before we get to the wants. But those are the boxes. And the feedback I've gotten from the rowers so far is they really like it. I like it because it helps me stay in the moment. I know my eyes get big. I'm looking to the end game. That's the fun part. Is the end is the racing is cross the finish line first. But when I focus on the outcome, right, my process is usually not as good. When I focus on the process, we usually get a really good outcome, right? And it helps me as a coach. Like, all right, this is the process for the week. Let's just check boxes. Same thing for me.
And that's a powerful, like, just way to kind of, again, like, it's easy to say stay in the moment, enjoy the process, kind of, just all the things that come in with the day to day, and don't get caught thinking about the end result and what race you're gonna like hopefully win, and whatever progressions on the erg and things like that. But when you have tangible pieces along the path that you have to kind of or literally check off to move forward, right? It's just, and can you stack those small wins in multiple aspects of life? And okay, well, now fast forward, 6, 8, 10 weeks, you have this backlog of consistency from just checking those boxes mentally, physically, emotionally, like all these different things. Like, I love that. Like, and you said that's something that developed kind of through just your coaching style over the last couple of years with the athletes' feedback and things like that. Is that kind of how that evolved?
Yeah, I would say I had a big moment this past summer. I got to work with Holly Austin at Ready Set Row, and she uses data to give goal splits for the erg, which is not new. But then we took it on the water, right? If your workout is X, then this workout should be Y, and that's something I'm hoping to do this year for 2K season on the water, right? Now weather and water temperatures all it makes it a little harder, right? If you do a workout when there's a tailwind and your race day it's a headwind, it's going to be harder. We're going to miss, right? Or we build false confidence. We did the workout in headwind. Now there's tailwind. Oh, look at us. We're cruising. Yeah, you're cruising. You're supposed to cruise the tailwind, right? But assuming that the wind and the weather and all are even, right? You do a workout on Wednesday, and based on that workout Wednesday, this should be your split on Saturday. Let's go hold that split on Saturday. And then if we win, we win. And if we don't, we don't. But let's hold that split, right? You do a. So for a general rule in the erg for us is going to be your 20-minute piece minus 6 to 8 is going to give you an idea of what your 2K is. All right. So using the same logic on the water, we do a 20-minute piece. There's our split. All right. This is going to give us an idea of what our 2K should be on Saturday, assuming the wind and the water cooperate. But less about us versus the other team, us versus the split. Sprinkled in with the moment, right? If you're down by a seat, you got to go, right? You can't get off and be like, we held our split. Did you go? Right? And maybe you went and it failed. Maybe you went and it worked. But also the moment dictates some sort of, we talk about an inverse relationship with the race plan to the race, right? Early on in the race, I'm not worried about everyone else. I'm just worried about our race plan. And then as the race goes on, they start to go this way. And then with 250 left, race the race, right? Not the race plan says we should take 5 to set up and we should take to breathe, right? Race the race, right? If you're down by a seat, go get that seat. But hopefully using data to set some goals so that we can be more internal. And I love learning that this summer. And that's kind of what's helped us set goals for these workouts, right? And check the boxes, right? What not only was this a box I completed, was this a quality box that I completed, right? And my target range. And that seems to be helping as well.
And that's something that I love that you said that with the, like, I always say, like, if you're doing a 2K, right? Like your first thousand is execution, right? Like your second thousand is where the race begins, right? Like
Yeah.
there shouldn't be any emotion or reactionary things in the first thousand. Like it should be about, hey, you've been here before, you know your race plan. The second thousand, and again, whether that's second thousand or 1,500, whatever it may be, right? Like, but that's where the emotions and the reactionary, forces of, hey, like I got to respond to this and all these different things. That's where that comes in. But
Hmm.
if you put that first, it's going to impact what you do in execution wise, right? Like if you're immediately like, hey,
Yep.
I have to get up ahead, and you're immediately going away from, right, kind of like you guys said, like what's the what is a realistic goal based off of prior training, right? That 20-minute to be able to do for this 2K effort. Okay, well, that's our game plan early on, but then how
Hmm.
does the race kind of play out? But if we go immediately to how the race plays out, well, it's going to impact how we
Yeah.
execute the first
Yeah.
half, right? The first
Yeah.
500. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the racing is the fun part, right? If it was just us versus the split, we do a 2K by ourselves and submit the score,
Yeah.
right? The racing is the fun part. The racing part is what makes you feel alive. The good and the bad, right? That's the fun part. We don't want to take away the fun part. And not but, because but undercuts it. And we got to be mature about our racing, right? If we want the result that we want, right? Because you're putting all this work in, you want to get a result. And the amount of work. When I was a freshman in college, one of the sophomores explained to me, he's like, if you take every final, not heats, just finals from the spring, it's 48 minutes. A soccer game is 90 minutes, right? We're just over half a soccer game in our racing. So racing's special. And you don't want to take that away from us. I love racing, and that's the fun part. A soccer team will play 25 games in 90 minutes. Our entire season combined is 48 minutes, right? So that's the fun part. We don't want to take that part away. Uh, but since we're doing it, we might as well do it well, right? And kind of balancing the two.
Yeah. That's I love that. I love the way you, again, just that approach to just creating a team and a culture around it, but then also how it applies to actually racing and the race itself, that
Mhm.
process oriented and kind of
Yeah.
approaching it all in that just way that, again, like people can latch on to and understand. And my question on that front, so it's kind of with, I want to ask you some more kind of generic, like, okay, like what can high school growers kind of learn from some of your advice and stuff like that. We'll get to that kind of here in a second, but the last thing I wanted to kind of mention in terms of like Skidmore specifically, um how do you, like, you've talked about kind of an importance or a focus on building the team, building the roster of athletes that fit what you're trying to build, both on the men's and the women's team. How do you sell that to, and again, sell might be the wrong word, but just message that to people who are interested in going up to Saratoga, New York, and being a part of a that program, right? And that vision.
Yep.
What's that messaging look like? And again, it varies for athlete from athlete to athlete, but like what are those things that you're highlighting and talking about, and providing to the people who maybe don't know anything
Yeah.
about what's going on up there?
Yeah. What I tell everyone is that it's a whole lot more fun on when we win together, right? Uh, that when you have people celebrating your successes, it's a whole lot more fun, right? So when the men do well, the women support them. When the women do well, the men support them, right? It's a whole lot more fun when everyone's in together, right? Then, uh, and that doesn't mean you can't be sad about your own result. Both you can be sad about your own result and celebrate everyone else, other people's successes, right? So most of the time, when we do our workouts, it's we warm up together, right? And on spring break, we'll do some sort of start every day with some sort of competition, right? Rock, paper, scissors, right? Losers are out, winners move on, find a new partner. And then it becomes the men's team versus the women's team and rock, paper, scissors, right? But that's energy, right? We get started, you want to win, right? Then we'll all do the same workout. We'll break up into pods, right? I'll take I'll take the men's varsity 8 and 2 4s, the women's varsity 8, the men's 2V will go with this coach, the men's 3V or the women's 2V will go with this coach, right? But we break up into pods, all doing the same general workout. Then we'll come back together. We'll all hit the dock at the same time. Then we'll stretch, and we're all out together, right? When we travel, we only go to races where both teams can go, right? We're not sending the men here and the women there. We're all one squad. Our captains, up until this semester, and the only reason we knew this semester is because the schedule didn't work out. Our captains have always met together, right? The men's captains and the women's captains, and when they're addressing the team, it's not men's captains, women's captains, it's captains, right? The men need to respect the women captains the same way they respect the men's captains, right? And the whole vision is that, and I say this jokingly, right, but also serious, right? When we get to our goal and we're on the cover of Row 2K, it's going to be all of us, right? All of us, not one of us, not two of us, all of us, and that's going to make the moment more special, and that is what makes us unique, right? And the team's bought into that, right? That's what's going to make us. We're gonna build each other up. We did a step test the other day, and one person find a partner from the men's team and the women's team. Find a partner you've never worked with before. Then we had all the men sit down, and their partner helping through the step test was someone from the women's team. And then we flip flopped, right? So we're still getting the workout in. We're still doing the work, but little things like your partner can be from the other team. We can support each other that way. On race day or on practice day, someone always hits the dock first, just the way it is. You hit the dock first, go get the other team's oars. Doesn't matter who got in first, go get the other team's oars so we get out of here a little faster, right? When we ring the bell, we got a PR bell. Everyone sticks around, not just for the men's team and the women's team. Everyone sticks around for the bell, right? Those little things of being there for each other make a more inclusive environment, and it's a ton of fun to be a part of.
Yeah, I love it, and just the connection between both programs. Like I think that's like, and building the team around that, right? And knowing for athletes coming in, right, like this is how we, this is the approach that we as a team take. Like we're one unit. We, again, like we have our own separate races, but then in every way that we can, we're together, right? Like in different ways. So I think athletes who are again, like right from the jump, they kind of know, like you guys have set that tone, right? Like this is what we do, right? Like, and I love that, right? I think that's unique that, to kind of build a culture around that.
My first year here at Skidmore, we do a workout like 3 minutes on, 7 minutes rest, and you're racing, right? So 1 versus 2, 3 versus 4, 5 versus 6. But our team wasn't big enough to have a race. So we did the first piece, and then we set spreads. So if on the first minute piece, like one guy pulled 800 meters and the top woman pulls 600 meters. On piece number 2, the guy has to beat the woman by 200 meters, like the difference of the first one. And then it got really spicy because they wanted to win. They wanted to compete, right? But then it became more fair, right? And that's because they had to push so hard in the second piece, we had more accurate spreads for the third piece, right? And then, all right, new matchup, you could race this person. We had one guy, he went 6:12 on the erg. He was fast, right? And he got matched up with a woman whose PR was 8 minutes. But he had to beat her by 400 meters on this piece or something wild like that. And they both had to work so hard, and it brought the intensity up, right? And that's kind of how we brought the team together. And then they had a newfound respect for each other, because when you're working that hard, you can only have respect for each other. And that was a really fun moment that we did when our team was 8 of men, 8 of women. Right. We had like a tournament style. We had the whiteboard, and we were talking about spreads, and all right, you got to beat him by 250. That's a lot. I said, yeah, I know. Good luck. And they did it, and it was a fun moment. It was one of my core memories of looking back at our growth of the program.
Yeah, that's all. I love that. I love again, like it just sounds like there's so much excitement going on when you have that. Right. Like I always kind of, say like, hey, like, 4 people in an erg room doesn't hold a candle to 16 people, right? Like it's a different energy. It's a different environment. And then when you when you bring everyone together, right. Like the boathouse unity is one, right, on one path, where it's like, hey, like, everyone's cheering each other on. It doesn't matter how fast you are. It doesn't matter. Like, I think that's something that's powerful that people can kind of latch on to and really be like, oh, like this is exciting to be a part of.
And I want to give credit to my seniors who have bought in and implemented it. Like, I'm just there from 4 to 6:30. We practice afternoons. The team builds from 6:30 to 4. It builds in the dining hall, builds in the carpool, it builds in the group chat, right? And we've got a group of seniors that are bought in and have led the way. And I've got 5 captains, 2 in the men's side, 3 in the women's side, and 11 seniors total. And I just write the spread, I just write the training plan and send the emails. They do the work, and it's the credit to them. That I've got an incredible group of seniors that have led the way on this, and it wouldn't have been without them. Without them, their buy-in, it's not happening.
Oh, that's awesome. That's I could talk about that all day because I'm always fascinated by how different programs run. And like again, I think that's something that a lot of coaches can kind of take notes on and take some things away from that, especially even at the high school level, right? Like there's things that they can apply. And with that, I want to be conscious of your time and all the things that you have going on. But a couple kind of wrap up questions as we kind of go. But I think turning the attention back to a little bit about what we're talking about right in the beginning, but just and even just with you and growing, Skidmore and the program and just college rowing as a whole. But I'd be curious to hear from you as we kind of, wrap things up with a few more questions, but just your experience as a coach, having coached at so many different levels, college, high school, middle school, even, kind of elite, beyond, like, what advice would you give to high school rowers who are aspiring to row at the college level and, with the understanding that there's a lot of different programs out there. There's a lot of different paths that you can go, right? Like there's so many options out there. And again, men's and women's side, but what would be kind of some of the things that you would tell a high school athlete who is looking to get started and like, hey, I do want to row in college. It's a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of programs out there, and I'm not too sure where to get started. I'm not too sure who I have to be as an athlete, right, in terms of my level of competitiveness. And again, broad question, but let's kind of wrap up with some of those different things as we again, just advice for those athletes out there.
Yeah. First piece of advice is that there's a program for everyone. There's D1, there's D2, there's D3, there's lightweight, there's club. There's a program for you somewhere if you want to row, right? I usually say ask the questions. Ask questions. The answers, you'll get 1 or 2 answers. It will validate your previous thoughts, or it will cause you to evaluate your previous thoughts, right? We had a woman we were recruiting, and she was verbally committed to Skidmore, and then she's like, I think I want to do a visit to this other school. I said, do it. She's like, really? I said, yep. It'll either validate your choice of Skidmore, or it'll cause you to evaluate, right? And neither's bad, right? This is your choice. And she went another visit. She came back. She's like, oh, you're right. Skidmore's it. I said, great. It validated her choice, right? And you learn a lot from college visits about the things you don't want. It's a lot like that game, Guess Who, right? Is the person wearing glasses? No. Right? You go on a college visit. I don't want to be in a big city. Great. You just cut half of the visits out. That just made your life a whole lot easier, right? I don't want to be in a team that has a 5V and a 6V. Boom. You just cut another half out. Right now, there's not that many rowing teams, right? All of a sudden now you've got a list, right? And know the things that you want. As competitive people, we want to win the relationship, right? I want to be wanted. I want to win the relationship, right? Even if that means giving up the things that I want. I just want them to want me, right? If you come to X school, you can't do A, B, and C. You can only row. Well, that sounds miserable, but I want them to want me, so I'll give up those things. And then you go to that school, you're miserable, right? You go to another school, So know what you want out of your college experience, right? Some people just want to row. Great, that's perfect. Some people want to row and be in a band. Cool. Can you do that at the school that you're looking at, right? Can you do the things that make you happy, right? There's a school out there that allows you to do that, right? You got to find it. You might have to work. It may not look like a traditional team, right? It might be a club team. It might be a team you've never heard of. But you're going to get the best experience out of it, right? Our 6th seat in our women's varsity 8, right, is in an a cappella group. She's fantastic. I went to her performance last year. She's fantastic, right? She might not have gotten that experience somewhere else, right? And that's why she came to Skidmore, and great. But she knew what she wanted, and she knew she can get that here. Great. And the other piece of advice I give people is academics are important, 100%. And I don't want to sound like, oh, Coach Manny got on a podcast and said academics are important. They're very important, right? But 2 + 2 is 4. If you come to Skidmore, it's 4. If you go to MIT, it's 4. If you go to community college, it's 4. It's always 4, right? Right or wrong, it's fact. Rowing is different, and you're going to spend most of your time with the rowing team, right? So you should enjoy the people you're spending time with, right? Not, I'm going to this school because even though I didn't jive with the team, they have the academics I want. Oh, you mean 2 + 2 is 4? Yeah, it's the same everywhere. Like, for the most part, the academics are the academics, right? It's always 4, right? You're going to spend more time with the rowing team than you will with any other group on campus. And just the way rowers are built, it's the way our sport is. It's not a bad thing. It just is, right? Make sure you vibe with the team, right? Because you're going to spend so much time with them. You better vibe with the team, right? Because that'll make your whole college experience, right? So ask questions, know what you want, and vibe with the team, and you'll put yourself in a pretty good place.
I absolutely, again, like that. There's some amazing information, like stuff, advice in there where it's like, I was having a conversation with an athlete a couple days ago. It's like, hey, like, add more schools, to your list, right? Like, look at more places, right? Like, because yeah, they might not be the brand name that some of your friends are going to, and this and that, but what you're going to learn through that process is, oh, there's something out there that I didn't know I wanted, and now I do. But also, you're going to learn what you don't want, right? Like, hey, like,
Mm-hmm.
I thought I wanted this, but then I talked to this coach and learned about what they do with their program or at the school itself. And actually, I'm curious if this school that I was looking at all along provides that opportunity. Like, you learn those things through communication, and I think that's a huge thing. So that was awesome. That's it. Yep, go ahead.
My former boss at Sagamore was the president of the club team at Hofstra. And my first gut was like, what is he going to teach me? And was I wrong? He could run a boathouse. He knew about equipment turnover. He knew about budgets and hiring coaches and hiring staff and the trailer certifications, all the stuff. I was like, blade in, blade through, blade out, repeat, right? All the other stuff about using, how summer can set you up financially so that you can do the things you want in the school in this year, how to make camps attractive so that people would sign up for them, how to get the most out of your coaches, all the stuff that I was like, and I'll admit I was wrong, right? What is he going to teach me? The former former president of Hofstra Crew, and he taught me so much in those 2.5 years. And I'm super grateful for him. And I've told him this before. Like, I'm grateful that he had the patience to teach me, because I was like, oh, blade through, blade out, piece of cake. And stuff I learned from him, I still carry on, right? In terms of, so now I've got to turn over, we've got a spreadsheet that a plan for the next 10 years, how we turn our equipment over. Old Manny never would have had that plan. Old Manny would be like, it's someone else's job to figure out. So here we are. It's not. It's my job to figure out. And I learned it from him, who was the president of Hofstra Crew. Right. And I think it took me a while to admit this, but being humble enough to learn is a big skill to have.
That's amazing. And I think, again, like, people, coaches and athletes can take away from that, right? It's like, hey, like,
Mhm.
those are, again, like we all kind of have our preconceived, like, hey, this is what I want, and then you have the conversation, you talk. Like, I mean, that's what this whole podcast is about. I just love learning from people who are knows things that I don't, and we can collaborate. And like, again, like it's a vehicle for that, and the same thing can happen on the recruiting process and learning about the opportunities out there for athletes from school, like what schools offer these and this. Like, no, I think there's a lot of powerful stuff in that messaging, and something that athletes and coaches can really get a lot of value from. Manny, with that, this was an absolute blast. My last piece for you is where can people find you? What are the first steps if they want to get in contact with you and the coaches and Skidmore and learn a little bit about that? Let's wrap up with that, and then maybe what you're excited about in the coming weeks, and then we can call it a day and maybe get a round two, because I do want to come up there at some point. I've been hearing all about the environment up that way, so we'll talk about that maybe at a later time. But tell us a little bit about where we can find you and what's coming up.
Yeah, so the easiest way to find us is on Instagram at Skidmore Rowing. You can send us a DM there. We'll get you my contact information. Coach Lenny, our recruiting coordinator's contact information. That's by far the easiest way. Is on Instagram at Skidmore Rowing. Has all our race results. We try and live stream races. We try and live stream practices on Instagram so people get an insight. We do that once a fall. We'll live stream practice so people can see what it's like, a real day in the life of being an athlete, and a ton of good information there. And I'm sorry, what was the second? What are we looking forward to? Yeah, our engines are in the shop. We picked them up on Friday, right? Going to break up ice, and we're getting on the water next week. So again, checking boxes. We have a 20-minute piece today. We got a 2K, our first 2Ks on Thursday. And then preparing the boathouse, right? Getting launches ready, checking float suits, and getting ready for going out. It's going to be cold. We got our spring break next week, our training program or training plan. We're here in Saratoga, and we'll have 9 practices. We're back Tuesday afternoon through Saturday, checking boxes. All right, let's have a really good spring break, and that sets us up for really good. Our first race is March 29th. Right. If you have a really good spring break, we're in a good place, right? But we got to focus on quality of spring break, bringing the team together, right? Because when we do winter training, we did in shifts, guys, men and women. So now we got to bring the team back together. We got to make sure we're all on the same stroke. The athletes that they were at the end of October. Hopefully they're better athletes now. They're not the same people. So now these new people need to learn new skills because they're different versions of themselves, right? And just keep checking boxes. And we keep checking boxes, we'll be okay.
I love it. I'm excited to follow along. I'm excited to check out the team, or hear how the team's doing. But Manny, this was a blast. Awesome time having you on. I would definitely want to do it again at a later date. And I'm sure we'll hopefully cross paths at a regatta, hopefully sometime this spring. But no, again, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, and good luck as you guys get on the water and kick off the season.
Thank you. Happy to do it.